Welcome to Creativity from Within podcast. I'm your host, Roxanne Catherine, and I believe that creativity has the power to heal, transform, and reconnect us to who we truly are. In this episode 14, which is inspiration over imitation, not copying what's around you, we will talk a little bit about comparison traps, developing your style, and why the world needs your one-of-a-kind voice. Our guest today is Dr. Ernestine Watson, a registered pharmacist, pharmacy owner, and lecturer, currently serving as chairperson of the Pharmacy Council of Jamaica. Dr. Watson brings extensive experience in pharmacy governance, professional advocacy, and sector leadership. Enjoy. Dr. Watson, it's a pleasure and honor to have you on today's podcast.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for being a part of the conversation. And today we're going to talk a little bit about inspiration over imitation. But before we get into the nuts and bolts, can you tell us a little bit about your background? You know, what you do, how you started?
Okay, so there was a pharmacist in front of me, in those days a druggist. And when I was looking for possible career choices, my dad said to me that maybe I should do that. Of course, in those days, the druggists used to be these old men, long white coats, very unapproachable. Not something that was really interesting to a teenager. However, I followed his advice. I went and did a summer internship at the pharmacy, and that's it. I've been there since
Oh, that's
as a
amazing.
pharmacist.
So you moved from Trinidad to Jamaica.
Okay, right. So I was on a scholarship in Trinidad, and I didn't like it too much because it was a work and study, and there were some attitudes within the environment that, coming from Holy Name Convent, it really did not encourage productivity. And so at that same time, our pharmacist joined the team, and she used to be in Jamaica she was a lecturer in Jamaica at the then CAS, College of Art, Science and Technology. And she said to me, so, well, why not apply?
Oh,
I
okay.
did, and I was accepted. I came to Jamaica and completed.
And you stayed. And the rest is history, basically.
Well, well, when I met my husband in Jamaica, I went back to Trinidad for a short while, but then we came back together in Jamaica.
That's wonderful. And in terms of being a pharmacist, I was looking at one of the things you sent me, and I never heard, for every podcast, I always learn something new. Can you tell me a little bit about community pharmacy? Because I didn't hear that. I never heard that before you sent me.
Okay. Okay. All right. So there are many different areas of pharmacy. So you can have a hospital pharmacy. You can go into research distribution. So what you will call your community pharmacy is the pharmacy that would be in your area. It's like your CVS, and so that you will go to and have a relationship with the local pharmacy. So in Jamaica, it is known as your community pharmacy. And I have been practicing as a community pharmacist for over 35 years now. Yeah, so, we get involved in quite a number of things. One of the things that I love doing, we do a lot of outreach. So we would do clinics, and we would go to different parts of Jamaica and do these health fairs there we have an opportunity to educate, we do testing, and in those fairs, what you find is that you pick up a lot of things. So I remember one of the tests that came the day the patient had a blood pressure of 210 over 100 and odd, and that is a stroke, you know, that's a stroke. So we stopped, and of course we got the patient, advised the patient that you need to go to the doctor, and they were a little bit hesitant. So we actually arranged for them to go to the hospital, which was nearby, and have they were admitted because it was that bad, a walk-in disaster. Mhm. So that is a big part of what we do. We also do a lot of in-house where we invite persons to the pharmacy. We have an open day and we say to them, in all your medications, and we would go through and do a drug review. And what you find is that, especially in our environment where there may be multiple generic drugs, a generic drug is a cheaper than the brand. In Jamaica, we do have a generic drugs. There's a generic drug law which says that you should advise the patient and there is a cheaper alternative. But one of the issues that we found when we do these drug reviews is that the patients may go to different, they may go to the clinic, go to the hospital, and then come to the pharmacy. And they may say, okay, so this is metformin, which is a drug used for diabetes. However, they have different brands, and this patient comes in with we call it brown bagging, and they come in and on that occasion, they had about 6 different types of the same drug. And the trouble is, we had to determine whether they were actually taking. So it might be a case of overdose and so. So, it's very effective community outreach. Sometimes we go to schools, we go to different offices, and we, do talks, health talks, and help patients to understand their medications more than just taking a medication.
In most of my podcasts, I always say that I believe that we should all be in therapy because sometimes we all struggle with life issues.
Different issues.
And it's, charity begins at home. And to me, your home is your mind. And if your charity doesn't begin up here or in here, you could search everywhere in the world for a quick fix. And it may not be necessarily what
And one of the things that you have to dig deep. There is we look at motivation versus consistency and commitment. We can be motivated for 2 days. That will not get us to our goal. We must be committed and we must be consistent. That is what makes the difference. So for a person who is obese and has to lose hundreds of pounds, because some of these persons who go on these drugs, they need to lose the weight, right? And so it is important that they first get to the point where they decide, I am going to make the necessary changes, right? So the motivation may lead to them to start, but the commitment is going to keep them consistent, which is going to bring them to their goals. So for me, consistency wins over motivation every time.
That's a good point. And what would you suggest? Let's say there's somebody that's grossly overweight and they don't know how to take action. They don't even know how to get up from where they are to have a plan or to start a plan or to do anything. So they just sit in the misery. What are there any like natural ways that somebody like that could start, or you know what I mean, to start to at least take baby steps if they're stuck?
Well, one of the first things is to discover your why. Why do I want to do this? For some person, it may be they have they have young children and they see they may have had an episode of having to go to the hospital or something, and it comes to them that I may die and leave my children. So that's their why. For other persons, they may have had a traumatic end to a relationship, right? And they look at themselves and they say to themselves, I am going to take control. You don't blame somebody else. You first of all have to look at you. Who am I? Why am I doing this? Why do I need to do this? And once you come to that point, it makes every other step easier, because several times along the way, you're going to forget. It's going to become so painful. It's not an easy road. It's going to become very difficult. And then you have to go back to the starting point. Why did I start in the first place? Why am I doing this? Who am I pleasing when I do this? You can't compare yourself with somebody else. It's about you, you versus you. You set your targets and you decide how fast you're going to do this. Some persons may decide, I'm going to do it in a year. Another person will say, listen, I am comfortable with any change. So even if it may have taken you 10 years to get to this point, so to reverse it, you can't reverse it in 6 months, right? So you make that commitment to me. I'm committed to myself that I am doing this because for this reason.
I love that. Oh my gosh. And I love it. How do you then, because we do live in a world where not all of us do it, some of us have the self discipline to be comfortable in our own skin and not compare. But I have to go back a little bit in history. When I attended Holy Name Convent, right? I was not fully blossomed into who I am today. You know, I was very skinny and underweight. I wore really thick glasses. And to me, that school had a lot of gorgeous girls. I never felt like I fit in, okay? But at the same time, there was something in me that while I would compare myself to some of the pretty girls, there was something in me that kept me from the comparison trap, okay? Because it's a trap. So, how would you tell people as a pharmacist community, right? You deal with the community. Somebody comes up to you and they say, you know, Dr. Watson, a younger person, of course, you know, everybody's taking medicine to clear up their skin or to lose weight or all these things, and my family cannot afford it. You know, what can I do to avoid being obsessed with comparing myself to other people? What advice could you give a young person listening to this podcast?
Okay, so the first thing I would say to them is that do you have a vision of where you want to go? How do you see yourself? What is important to you? What makes you at peace? What makes you want to get up in the morning and go again? So you have to go back to your why. Why am I doing this? Why do I want to go from where I am now to some other point? And you set your own goals, right? You are competing, but you're competing against yourself. You're not competing against anyone else, because, comparisons can do two things. It can make us very proud because we are so much prettier and we are so much more intelligent, right? Or it can make us really depressed because everything I do, this person does it better than me. However, right? Okay, at our age, I am in a exercise class with people who are in their 20s, right? When the coach says to you, do 100 push-ups, okay? No, I am not going to compete with these young people who are going to do the 100 push-ups in say, three minutes. I'm going to do because I set my goals. So my first goal would be to make it to 20, right? And then next time I go to 50, and when I finally reach the 100, I'm going to say, okay, It took me 5 minutes to do this 100. Let me see if I can do it in 4 minutes, 3 minutes, and you cut it down. So the important thing that I would say to that young person, where do you want to be? How and what is the plan to get to there? And then from that point, once you have discovered your why, then we can sit down and have a conversation about alternatives to get to there. So, for example, if this young person is having a breakout of acne, right? The obvious thing is that I don't want the acne because everybody else's face is clean, right? I because it is painful and I find it disturbing to me. So once you identify that, then how are we going to go about it? Are we going to go naturally? You may say that you cannot afford. There are lots of natural remedies then that we can sit down and we can try, you know, natural herbal products, things that we find right in the garden, the aloe vera. You can crush the aloe vera with your honey, put on a paste, do that 2, 3 times for the week, and you will be surprised. Right? Bicarbonate of soda, you mix the bicarbonate of soda with a little bit of lime, and you wash your face with daily. So those things you can get in your cupboard at home, right? And so surely, slowly you can get to where you want to be.
I love that. And I love that you just gave two great ideas that people could actually use.
Right.
That's really good. And how would you like it all ties into why would you tell again a young person, because the whole purpose of this is to inspire young adults, how can they go about developing their own unique style? Like you knew from an early age that you wanted to get into the pharmaceutical industry, right? And there might be some kid at home saying, you know what, I want to be like Dr. Watson. I'm a female, I'm a male, but I want to be a pharmacist too. What advice can you give them? Baby steps.
Okay, so it's according to where they are. So there are many avenues to becoming a pharmacist. For some persons, they go through college, right? And of course, you go to pharmacy school, you develop a passion in a specific area. And now the good thing about our profession now is that there are pharmacists who do things like what we are doing now. They do health podcasts, right? So and so they are developing different areas. You can go into research, you can go into many different areas. So the first thing is, of course, to get the qualifier. Based on where you are in the world, it's always difficult to get into pharmacy school, but based on where you are, it might be a little bit easier. So within the Caribbean, it is not as competitive to get into pharmacy school as it may be in the US and Canada. So, that you go through school, but then there are other avenues where you can get into working in the pharmacy as a technician, pharmacy technician. You do the pharmacy technician training, you pass that exam, and then you can upgrade to a pharmacy to become a pharmacist. So the route you take is dependent on, of course, your financial abilities, but also your determination to succeed.
That's nice. And what is your take as a pharmacist about people who feel that they need to, in order to sleep? Because I hear so many things, I don't know what to believe. Like, in order to sleep, they have to pop a pill at night. There are also natural ways that you could sleep, right? Without
Mhm.
having to, I don't want to use the wrong words. I have to be so careful with what words without becoming addicted or dependent on drugs.
Well, it is a real issue. It is a real issue, especially in this modern age of technology, the TikTok and persons. I have seen persons come online and say, "Oh, I did this and it worked," and you see their followers just jump on, and that can be so very dangerous. So it's never ever a good idea for you to self-medicate. And Dr. Google did not have a degree. He never got a degree. you know. So it's always wise for you to seek professional help if you have an issue with sleep or any, and some persons have chronic pain. If you have an issue, you need to seek medical attention. You need to get the professional to do a proper evaluation. Of course, you can come into your pharmacist and you can have a conversation, because usually the pharmacist is the first point of contact with the medical team. And so we are so trained that we can recognize the symptoms where we need to refer you, or whether you can use an over the counter, something that can be bought off the shelf. And there are many things that can be bought off the shelf which would assist in sleeping. But then there are also habits that need to be adjusted. Personal habits. So, for example, persons go to sleep with their phones, right? And that disturbs the natural cyclic rhythm, so that you find that the melatonin, it should be at around 10 o'clock in the evening that the melatonin kicks in and you start to go to sleep. But some persons, they are on the phone way past 10 o'clock, and then they are unable to fall asleep because the time for the melatonin has passed, and now you're moving into the early hours, and then the cortisol rises, and cortisol wreaks havoc, right? Sleep, another thing that affects how you perform. Sleep affects even down to your weight loss. If you are not able to sleep, you find that you can't lose weight, you can't perform. It affects so many different areas of our lives.
Wow. You dropped a lot of good information. Before I wrap things up, I want one more gem from you. In a world of trends, how do we stay true to ourselves?
Love yourself. Find out who you are. And it comes back again. You know, for me, I practice gratitude. I love, I love freely. So to me, it's easy to love people. And again, because I have experienced the love of God in my life, it's easy for me to love others. Some persons are very difficult because you do have some patients that really test you, right? But basically, I feel that I have something to give to the world. And what do I have to give to the world? I believe that the world is full of chaos. It's full of persons are showing so much signs of depression, and so I believe that I have a joy. There's a joy that is bubbling up in me that I think I can share with others. In sharing, someone said to me that, oh, it's easy for certain persons to be joyful because that is their nature. And that may be so, but nature can be cultivated, it can be developed. Because if you tell yourself every day, there's one thing to be grateful for, and you decide, I'm grateful for this, and every day you say to yourself, this is what I am grateful for, you find that it changes your whole personality. It changes how persons react to you, because persons now come to you and they say, oh, but you know, they enter sad. I'll give you an instance. There was a patient came to me, and she was very annoyed, and she had some issues before. She had been trying to get the medications, couldn't get the medication. Eventually she called, and we said that we had it. So when she came with that anger, she came with that frustration, she came with everything, and she walked up to me with this attitude like she was ready to take my head off. And I looked at her and I smiled, and I allowed her you know to vent. I allowed her. And she never smiled back at me, but I was smiling and I was complimenting her. I said to her, you look I love your outfit. And, just to change her attitude. Anyway, at the end of filling the prescription, she looked at me and she said, thank you. Thank you for being so nice, even when I was so disrespectful. And I smiled. And that made my day. So I try to always be the one who see the good. I see the joy. And I mean, the Lord has deposited so much joy in me. The joy of the Lord is my strength, and I continue to trust and wait on him.
I love this. Anyway, our time is up, but this is such a good conversation. You dropped a lot of good gems. Thank you so much for
You're
taking the
welcome.
time out of your schedule to share with not just the people here, but anybody watching the podcast, for sharing these gems with us. And God bless you. God continue
God
to
bless
bless
you.
you. And thank you for all that you do to inspire so many others along the way.
Thank you, and bless you too. You are doing a great job as well.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.